It's not what you think. I can explain.
You already explained everything the moment you kissed him.
My name is Grant Winslow, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered my wife was screwing her ex-boyfriend in our own bed while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for our daughter's college tuition. But let me back up a little, because the real story isn't just about adultery. It's about how I transformed from a mild-mannered financial auditor into something much darker. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It was a Tuesday night in October when everything started unraveling. I was sitting in my home office in suburban Cleveland, nursing a glass of whiskey and reviewing spreadsheets for a client audit when I heard Erin's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. The notification lit up the screen. Nathan, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Nathan, her ex-boyfriend from college. The same Nathan who'd been her subordinate at the recruiting firm 5 years ago before starting his own luxury car dealership. The same Nathan who always seemed to show up at our neighborhood barbecues with that smug smile and expensive cologne. At least she's not cheating with the pool boy, I muttered to myself. We don't even own a pool. I walked into the kitchen where Erin was loading the dishwasher with unusual vigor. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore that guilty expression I'd seen when she'd maxed out our credit card on a shopping spree. Who's Nathan texting you about? I asked, keeping my voice casual. She froze, a dinner plate halfway to the rack. Oh, that's nothing, just work stuff. He's thinking about expanding his business and wants some recruiting advice. At 11 p.m.? You know how entrepreneurs are. They never sleep. She forced a laugh and quickly grabbed her phone, clutching it against her chest. Besides, you're always working late too. That night, after Erin fell asleep, I did something I'd never done in 18 years of marriage. I went through her purse. Tucked behind her credit cards was a hotel keycard from the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where she claimed to have attended a team training seminar last week. My hands trembled as I held the plastic card. The expiration date was still 3 days away. I crept back to my office and pulled up our home smart security system on my laptop. We'd installed it 2 years ago after a string of neighborhood break-ins. The system logged every time someone used the front door code. What I found made my stomach drop. Nathan's access code, the one we'd given him for emergencies when he house sat during our vacation, had been used twice in the past month. Both times were during my business trips to Cincinnati. I poured another whiskey, this one considerably larger than the first. The next morning, Erin was unusually cheerful, humming while she made coffee and actually kissing my cheek before I left for work. She was wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her curves in all the right places. I might be late tonight, she said, not meeting my eyes. Missy wants to grab dinner and catch up. Missy Harper was Erin's best friend and the HR director at her company. If anyone would cover for an affair, it would be Missy. Have fun, I said, forcing a smile. At the office, I couldn't concentrate. Numbers blurred together on my computer screen as I imagined Erin and Nathan together. My junior auditor, Luke Brennan, knocked on my door around noon. Mr. Winslow, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Luke was 28, fresh out of his MBA program and sharp as a tack. He reminded me of myself 15 years ago, ambitious, idealistic, and completely naive about how easily people could betray you. Just tired, Luke. Long night reviewing the Henderson account. Want me to take a look? Fresh eyes might help. I appreciated his eagerness, but my mind was elsewhere. Actually, Luke, I need to ask you a favor. It's personal. He sat down, concerned. Of course. What do you need? I think my wife might be having an affair. I need someone to help me figure out if I'm being paranoid or if my suspicions are justified. Luke's eyes widened. He'd met Erin at several company functions and always complimented me on having such a lovely wife. Jesus, Mr. Winslow, are you sure? I showed him the hotel keycard and the security logs on my phone. His expression grew grim as he processed the evidence. This doesn't look good, he admitted. What do you want to do? I want to know for certain. Tonight she's supposedly having dinner with her friend Missy. I'm going to follow her. That's pretty intense. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I looked at Luke's young, earnest face and realized I was dragging him into something that could get messy. But I needed an ally, someone who could help me think clearly when my emotions were running high. I have to know the truth, Luke. I can't live with this uncertainty. That evening, I parked across the street from Erin's office building and waited. At 6:30, she emerged wearing the same new dress from the morning, but she'd let her hair down and applied fresh lipstick. She looked beautiful, and for a moment, I hoped I was wrong about everything. Then Nathan's silver BMW pulled up to the curb. I watched my wife of 18 years slide into the passenger seat and kiss another man on the lips. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that made my chest tighten with rage. I followed them to Romano's, an upscale Italian restaurant on the other side of town. Through the window, I could see them holding hands across the table, feeding each other bites of food, laughing like teenagers. Erin threw her head back at something Nathan said, and he reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching my marriage dissolve over breadsticks and wine. When they finally left the restaurant, they drove straight to the Marriott. I watched them walk into the lobby together, Nathan's hand on the small of Erin's back, guiding her toward the elevators. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with anger and humiliation. Our daughter Chloe was home from Ohio State for the weekend, sprawled on the couch watching Netflix. "Hey, Dad, how was work?" "Fine, sweetheart. Where's your mother?" "Out with Aunt Missy. Girls' night, you know how it is?" Chloe didn't look up from her phone. At 20, she had Erin's sharp features and my stubborn streak. She was majoring in communications and had inherited her mother's talent for manipulation. I went to my office and stared at the wall for an hour, trying to process what I'd witnessed. My marriage was over, that much was clear. But what came next? Divorce? Confrontation? Revenge? I thought about Nathan's smug face, his expensive car, his successful business. He'd taken my wife, violated my home, and destroyed my family. And for what? Because he could? That's when I started planning. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception and surveillance. If self-pity were an Olympic sport, I'd have taken home the gold, but I channeled that energy into something more productive, gathering evidence. I installed a keylogger on our home computer and discovered that Erin had been deleting her browser history religiously, but she'd forgotten about the autosaved passwords. Her email account revealed months of correspondence with Nathan, starting innocent enough with business questions, but quickly escalating to explicit exchanges that made my stomach turn. "Grant's working late again," she'd written in one message. "Sometimes I think he loves those spreadsheets more than me." Nathan's response: "His loss is my gain. Can't wait to show you how a real man treats a woman." I printed everything and stored the evidence in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. At work, Luke became my unofficial partner in investigation. He had a talent for social media stalking that put the FBI to shame. "Check this out," he said one afternoon, showing me his laptop screen. "Nathan posted this on Instagram yesterday." The photo showed Nathan's office at the dealership, but in the background, barely visible, was a woman's red scarf draped over a chair. I recognized it immediately. I'd bought it for Erin last Christmas. "Arrogant bastard," I muttered. "He's practically advertising the affair." "There's more," Luke said, scrolling through Nathan's feed. "Look at the timestamps on his posts. They align perfectly with your wife's late nights at the office." I leaned back in my chair, impressed despite my anger. "You're good at this, Luke. Ever consider a career change to private investigation?" "Just trying to help, Mr. Winslow. This guy sounds like a real piece of work." That evening, I decided to pay Nathan a visit at his dealership. Car Luxury Motors was located in an upscale shopping district, all glass and chrome with expensive cars gleaming under showroom lights. Nathan had done well for himself, I had to admit. I walked in wearing my best suit, playing the role of a potential customer. Nathan spotted me immediately, probably because I was the only person in the showroom who looked like I belonged there. "Grant, what a surprise!" He flashed that $1,000,000 smile and extended his hand. "Looking for a new ride?" I shook his hand, resisting the urge to squeeze until bones cracked. "Just browsing, Nathan. Erin mentioned you had some nice inventory." "She did, huh?" His smile faltered slightly. "Well, let me show you around. I've got a beautiful BMW convertible that just came in, perfect for a successful guy like yourself." He led me to a gleaming red convertible, his pride and joy based on the way he caressed the hood. "This baby's got everything. Leather seats, premium sound system, GPS navigation. She handles curves like a dream." "I bet she does," I said, running my hand along the car's sleek lines. "Must be nice, having something so responsive at your fingertips." Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly, but his salesman's smile never wavered. "Would you like to take her for a test drive?" "Actually, I was hoping we could chat in your office first. Talk numbers." His office was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, awards on the walls, and a photo of him shaking hands with some local politician. On the desk was a coffee mug that read, "World's Greatest Boss." "So Grant, what's your budget looking like?" Nathan settled into his leather chair, fingers steepled. "Oh, I think I can afford more than you might expect." I sat across from him, studying his face. "Business has been very good lately. I've been auditing some interesting accounts." "That's great to hear. Erin always said you were good with numbers." "Funny you should mention my wife. She's been talking about you quite a bit lately." A muscle in Nathan's jaw twitched. "Has she? All good things, I hope." "Oh, yes. She's very appreciative of your advice." I leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Nathan, do you always conduct business meetings at the Marriott?" The color drained from his face. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Grant." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You've been sleeping with my wife." Nathan stood up abruptly, knocking over his coffee mug. The hot liquid spread across his desk, soaking papers and dripping onto the floor. "I think you should leave," he said, his voice tight. "Absolutely." I stood and pulled out my business card, placing it on his wet desk. "But first, let me give you some free advice. You're not as slick as you think you are, Nathan, and this isn't over." I walked out of his office, leaving him to clean up the mess. It felt good to see him rattled, but I knew it was just the beginning. That night, Erin came home late again, claiming she'd been at a client dinner. She was wearing a different outfit than she'd left in that morning, and her hair had that tousled look that I'd once found endearing. "How was your day?" she asked, not really listening as she scrolled through her phone. "Interesting. I went car shopping." She looked up sharply. "Really? What kind of car?" "A BMW convertible. Nathan showed me around his dealership." Erin's face went white, then red, then white again. You went to see Nathan? Is that a problem?" "No, of course not. What did you think of the cars?" "Overpriced. And the salesman was a real piece of work. The kind of guy who thinks he can take whatever he wants without consequences." Erin set down her phone, her hands shaking slightly. "Grant, is there something you want to say to me?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd fallen in love with in college, the mother of my child, the person I'd trusted with my heart and my future. She was still beautiful, still intelligent, still capable of making me laugh when she wanted to, but she was also a stranger, someone who could lie to my face while planning to meet her lover. "No," I said finally. "Nothing at all." But that was a lie. I had plenty to say, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the Ledger, a dive bar on the east side of Cleveland where my old boxing coach, Tyler "Ty" Kramer, held court. Ty was 50 years old, built like a brick shithouse, and had more street wisdom in his pinky finger than most people had in their entire bodies. I found him behind the bar, polishing glasses and watching the morning news. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Ty said, grinning. "Grant Winslow, as I live and breathe. What brings you to my humble establishment at 10 in the morning?" "I need advice, Ty, and probably several drinks." "Advice I can do. Drinks, you'll have to pace yourself. What's eating you, kid?" I told him everything. The affair, the evidence, my confrontation with Nathan. Ty listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting in understanding. "So, what do you want to do about it?" he asked when I finished. "I want to destroy them both." Ty raised an eyebrow. "That's a dangerous road, Grant. You sure you want to go down it?" "They humiliated me, Ty, in my own home, with my own wife. Nathan thinks he's untouchable because he's got money and charm. Erin thinks I'm too weak to fight back." "And are you?" I met his eyes. "Not anymore." Ty poured 2 shots of whiskey and slid one across the bar. "Then let me give you some advice. Don't get even. Get ahead. Make them come to you. Make them desperate. And when they're at their lowest point, that's when you strike." "How? You're an auditor, right? You understand how systems work, how to find weaknesses and exploit them. Apply those skills to your personal life." I downed the whiskey, feeling it burn all the way down. "You're right. I've been thinking about this all wrong. I was focused on confrontation, but that's not my strength. My strength is patience, planning, and finding the cracks in the foundation." "Now you're talking sense. But Grant?" Ty's expression grew serious. "Once you start down this path, there's no going back. You sure you're ready for that?" I thought about Erin's lies, Nathan's smugness, the way they'd both made me feel like a fool. "I'm ready." Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, methodical, cold, and utterly focused on revenge. I started by securing my finances, quietly transferring money from our joint accounts to a private account Erin didn't know about. Not everything, just enough to ensure I'd have resources when the time came. I also began documenting everything with the precision of a forensic accountant. Every lie Erin told, every late night, every suspicious text message. I created spreadsheets tracking their patterns, cross-referencing Nathan's social media posts with Erin's claimed whereabouts. The data painted a clear picture of deception. Luke proved invaluable during this phase. His generation's natural fluency with technology allowed him to dig deeper into their digital lives than I ever could have managed alone. "I found something interesting," he said one afternoon, pulling up Nathan's business records on his laptop. His dealership has been struggling financially. He's behind on lease payments and owes money to several suppliers. "How did you find that out?" "Public records, mostly. Plus, I have a friend who works at the bank that holds his business loan. Apparently, Nathan's been leveraging his personal assets to keep the business afloat." This was valuable intelligence. A desperate man makes stupid decisions, and I intended to capitalize on Nathan's vulnerability. That evening, I implemented the first phase of my plan. I called our marriage counselor, Dr. Patricia Wells, and scheduled an appointment. "I'd like to discuss some issues Erin and I have been having," I told her over the phone. "Of course, Grant. Is Erin available to join us?" "Actually, I was hoping to speak with you alone first. There are some things I need to share before we involve her." During the appointment, I presented Dr. Wells with printed copies of Erin's emails and a detailed timeline of the affair. Her professional composure cracked slightly as she reviewed the evidence. "This is quite serious, Grant. Have you confronted Erin about this?" "Not yet. I wanted professional guidance on how to proceed. I think individual counseling might be beneficial before we attempt couples therapy. This level of deception suggests deeper issues that need to be addressed." "I agree completely. In fact, I think Erin's workplace should be aware of the situation, given that it involves a former subordinate and could create liability issues for her company." Dr. Wells nodded thoughtfully. "That's a valid concern. Relationships between supervisors and former employees can create complicated legal situations." The next day, I sent an anonymous email to Erin's company's ethics hotline, detailing her relationship with Nathan and including select portions of their correspondence. I was careful to frame it as a concerned employee worried about potential harassment or favoritism issues. Within hours, Missy Harper called Erin in a panic. I could hear both sides of the conversation from my office as Erin paced the kitchen, her voice rising with each exchange. "What do you mean there's an investigation?" Erin demanded. "Who would report something like that?" "I don't know," Missy replied, her voice tinny through the phone speaker. "But HR is taking it seriously. They want to interview you tomorrow morning." "This is insane. Nathan and I haven't done anything wrong." I almost laughed at that blatant lie. "Erin, honey, you need to be very careful here. The company has strict policies about relationships with former employees, especially when there's a supervisory history." After Erin hung up, she sat at the kitchen table with her head in her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Problems at work?" I asked, walking into the kitchen with studied casualness. She looked up, her eyes red and watery. "Just some office politics. Nothing I can't handle." "I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always do." The HR investigation moved quickly. Within a week, Erin was placed on administrative leave pending a full review of her conduct. The stress was clearly getting to her. She'd lost weight, developed dark circles under her eyes, and started drinking wine with lunch. Meanwhile, I turned my attention to Nathan's business. I knew from Luke's research that Car Luxury Motors was financially vulnerable, so I decided to apply some pressure. I started by filing complaints with the Better Business Bureau about Nathan's sales practices, using fake names and email addresses. Nothing illegal, just the kind of negative reviews that could damage a luxury business's reputation. Then I got creative. I knew Nathan's biggest weakness was his ego, so I targeted that directly. I created fake social media accounts and began posting negative comments on his business pages, always staying just within the bounds of legal criticism. "Overpriced cars and sleazy salesmen," read one review. "Nathan Carr promised me the world but delivered disappointment. Save your money and go elsewhere." The reviews started affecting his business almost immediately. Luxury car buyers do their research, and a pattern of negative feedback can be devastating in that market. But my masterpiece was yet to come. I knew from Erin's emails that she and Nathan met regularly at the Marriott on Thursday evenings. So on a Thursday afternoon, I called the hotel's management and identified myself as Nathan's business partner. "I'm concerned about Mr. Carr's use of company funds for personal entertainment," I told the manager. "Could you provide me with records of his recent stays?" "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't release guest information without proper authorization." "Of course. What if Mr. Carr authorized the release himself?" I'd been practicing Nathan's signature for weeks, and his handwritten authorization letter was nearly perfect. The hotel manager, eager to avoid any business complications, provided me with detailed records of Nathan's stays, including room service charges and incidental expenses. The records showed a pattern of expensive dinners, champagne, and couples spa treatments, all charged to Nathan's business credit card. Perfect evidence of financial impropriety that I could use later. That weekend, Chloe came home from college for a visit. She immediately noticed the tension in the house. "What's going on with you and Mom?" she asked, finding me in my office Saturday morning. "What do you mean?" "Come on, Dad. I'm not blind. Mom's been crying. You're working even more than usual, and you two barely speak to each other." I looked at my daughter's concerned face and felt a pang of guilt. She was an innocent victim in all this, caught between her parents' failing marriage. "Your mother and I are going through a rough patch," I said carefully. "Is it about money? I know my tuition is expensive, and I could always transfer to a cheaper school." "No, sweetheart, it's not about money." "Then what?" I hesitated, torn between protecting her innocence and preparing her for what was coming. "Your mother has been seeing someone else." Chloe's face crumpled. "You mean like an affair?" "Yes." "Are you sure? Maybe it's just a friendship that—" "I'm sure, Chloe. I have proof." She was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to end this marriage. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and both your mother and I love you very much." "Do I know him? The other guy?" "Nathan Carr. He owns the car dealership on Maple Street." Chloe's expression hardened. "I remember him. He came to your birthday party last year. He kept making jokes about your age and calling you old man." "You noticed that?" "I notice a lot of things, Dad. I just didn't think— I never imagined Mom would—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "I know this is hard, sweetheart, but I need you to understand that what happens next might get ugly. Your mother and I will probably get divorced, and there might be some difficult conversations ahead." Chloe nodded, wiping her eyes. "What can I do to help?" Her question surprised me. "You don't need to help with anything. This is between your mother and me. But I want to help. Nathan sounds like a complete asshole, and if he hurt our family, he should pay for it." I studied my daughter's face, seeing a steel in her eyes that reminded me of myself. "You're more like me than I realized." "Is that a bad thing?" "Not necessarily, but promise me you won't do anything reckless. I have a plan, and I need you to trust me to handle this." "Okay, Dad, but if you need anything at all, just ask." That night, as I lay in bed listening to Erin's restless sleep beside me, I reflected on how much my life had changed in just a few weeks. I'd gone from a trusting husband to a calculating strategist, from someone who avoided conflict to someone who embraced it. And I was just getting started. The following Monday brought the news I'd been waiting for. Erin's HR investigation concluded with her termination for violating company policies regarding relationships with former employees. She came home that afternoon looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "They fired me," she said, slumping into a kitchen chair. I looked up from my laptop, feigning surprise. "What? Why?" "The Nathan situation. Someone reported our relationship to HR, and they decided it created a conflict of interest." "I'm sorry to hear that. Do you have any idea who might have reported it?" Erin shook her head miserably. "Could have been anyone. Office politics are brutal." "What did Nathan say about all this?" He's been distant lately. I think the stress is getting to him, too." I almost smiled. Nathan was about to have much bigger problems than stress. That evening, while Erin was in the shower, I implemented the next phase of my plan. Using the hotel records I'd obtained, I created a detailed expense report showing Nathan's misuse of business funds. Then I anonymously mailed copies to his business partners, his bank, and the IRS. I also sent copies to Nathan's wife, along with a note, "Thought you should know how your husband spends his business trips." The response was swift and devastating. Nathan's wife kicked him out of their house, his business partners demanded an audit of company finances, and the bank froze his credit lines pending an investigation. Within a week, Carr Luxury Motors was in serious trouble. I drove by the dealership one afternoon and saw Nathan arguing with a man in an expensive suit, probably his lawyer or accountant. Luke met me for lunch that Friday to provide an update on Nathan's situation. "It's bad," he reported with barely concealed glee. "His wife filed for divorce and is demanding half of everything. His business partners are talking about dissolving the company, and the bank is threatening to call in his loans." "What about the IRS investigation?" "Still ongoing, but my friend at the bank says Nathan's been using business accounts for personal expenses for years. If they find evidence of tax evasion, he could be looking at serious legal trouble." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Nathan's world was crumbling, just as he'd helped destroy mine. But I wasn't finished with Erin. That weekend, I told her I was going to Miami for a business conference. Instead, I drove to a cabin in the Pocono Mountains that I'd rented under an assumed name. I spent 3 days there, posting photos on social media of myself looking relaxed and happy. In one photo, I was having dinner with an attractive woman named Jennifer, an old college friend who happened to be vacationing in the area. The photo was innocent, just 2 friends catching up, but I made sure to tag Erin's friends and family so they'd see it. The reaction was immediate. Erin called me dozens of times, but I let every call go to voicemail. Her messages grew increasingly frantic. "Grant, who is that woman in your photo? Why aren't you answering your phone? We need to talk." When I finally returned home on Sunday evening, Erin was waiting in the living room with red-rimmed eyes and a half-empty bottle of wine. "Who is Jennifer?" she demanded before I'd even set down my suitcase. "An old friend from college. We ran into each other at the hotel." It looked like more than that. I sat down across from her, studying her face. "Are you jealous, Erin?" "I'm concerned. You've been acting strange lately, and now you're posting photos with other women." "Strange how?" "Distant. Cold. Like you're planning something." She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. "Maybe I'm just tired of being taken for granted." "What's that supposed to mean?" This was the moment I'd been building toward. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken outside Romano's restaurant weeks earlier, a clear shot of her and Nathan kissing. Erin's face went white. "Where did you get that?" "I took it myself. The night you were supposedly having dinner with Missy." She stared at the photo, her hands shaking. "Grant, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you've been sleeping with your ex-boyfriend in our bed while I was working to support our family?" The crude language hit her like a slap. Erin prided herself on being refined, sophisticated. Hearing me speak so bluntly seemed to shock her more than the accusation itself. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Really? Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife has been cheating on me for months while I've been busting my ass to pay for our daughter's education and our mortgage." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "I never meant for it to happen. Nathan and I we connected. He makes me feel alive again." "And I don't?" "You work all the time, Grant. When's the last time we went out together? When's the last time you told me I was beautiful?" "So this is my fault." "No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying our marriage has been dying for years, and Nathan reminded me what it felt like to be desired." I stood up, pacing to the window. "You know what, Erin? You're right. Our marriage has been dying, but instead of talking to me about it, instead of suggesting counseling or trying to work things out, you decided to sneak around behind my back. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy. So you told Nathan instead." She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, turning back to face her. "I've already filed for divorce. The papers will be served tomorrow morning." "Grant, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Nathan. We can go to counseling." "It's too late for that. I've already moved our money to separate accounts. I've documented your affair and shared the evidence with my lawyer. And I've made sure that Nathan won't be a problem anymore." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say his business is experiencing some difficulties. Turns out that mixing personal and professional relationships can be very expensive." Erin's eyes widened as she began to understand the scope of what I'd done. "You destroyed his business?" "I exposed his business practices. There's a difference." "You're scaring me, Grant. This isn't like you." "You're right. The old Grant would have suffered in silence, maybe drunk himself into ruin over a few years while you and Nathan laughed behind his back. But this Grant fights back." I walked toward the stairs, then paused. "Oh, and Erin, you might want to start looking for a new place to live. This house is in my name, and I'll be changing the locks next week. You can't throw me out of my own home." "Actually, I can. Check the deed. I bought this house before we got married, and Ohio law is very clear about separate property." I left her crying in the living room and went to my office to make final preparations for the endgame. The annual Willowbrook Estates block party was scheduled for the first Saturday in November. It was the social event of the year for our neighborhood, a chance for everyone to gossip, show off their latest purchases, and pretend they were all best friends. This year, it would be the perfect venue for my final act of revenge. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. The divorce papers had been served, Erin had moved in with her sister, and Nathan's business had collapsed entirely. He'd been forced to declare bankruptcy and was facing potential criminal charges for tax evasion, but I wanted more than their individual destruction. I wanted their public humiliation. The party was held in the community park at the center of our subdivision. Tables were set up with potluck dishes, a DJ played classic rock, and children ran around with face paint and balloons. It was the picture of suburban normalcy. Erin showed up around noon, looking thin and haggard, but trying to maintain her composure. She'd always been proud of her social standing in the neighborhood, and I knew it was eliminating her to face everyone after the divorce filing became public knowledge. Nathan arrived an hour later, driving a beat-up Honda instead of his usual BMW. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month. His expensive clothes had been replaced with off-the-rack alternatives, and his confident swagger was gone. I watched them from across the park, nursing a beer and chatting with neighbors who kept asking pointed questions about my situation. "How are you holding up, Grant?" asked Mrs. Lawton, our elderly neighbor who knew everyone's business. "I'm doing well, actually. Looking forward to starting fresh." "And Erin? She seems stressed?" "Divorce is hard on everyone," I said diplomatically. Around 3 o'clock, the DJ announced that anyone who wanted to make a toast or speech could use the microphone. This was my cue. I walked over to the DJ booth and asked for the mic. The crowd gradually quieted as I climbed onto the small stage they'd set up for the band. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the park. "I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for being such wonderful neighbors over the years." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I could see Erin near the back, her face pale with worry. "As many of you know, Erin and I are getting divorced. It's been a difficult time for our family, but I believe in being honest with the people who matter to me." The crowd was completely silent now, sensing that something significant was about to happen. I discovered a few months ago that my wife was having an affair with Nathan Carr. I gestured toward Nathan, who was trying to blend into the crowd. "Some of you might remember Nathan. He used to come to these parties as our guest." Gasps and murmurs spread through the audience. Erin looked like she wanted to disappear into the ground. Now, I'm not here to air dirty laundry or embarrass anyone unnecessarily, but I think it's important that you all know the truth, especially since Nathan has been telling people that I'm the one who destroyed his business out of jealousy. I pulled out a folder of documents I'd prepared. The truth is, Nathan destroyed his own business by using company funds for personal expenses, including hotel rooms where he met my wife. When his business partners and the IRS found out about his financial improprieties, they took appropriate action. Nathan stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "You snake! You set me up!" "I exposed you," I corrected. "There's a difference. Everything I reported was true and verifiable." "You ruined my life." "No, Nathan. You ruined your own life when you decided to sleep with another man's wife and steal from your business partners. I just made sure the right people found out about it." The crowd was eating this up like a soap opera. Phones were out, recording everything for social media posterity. Erin finally found her voice. "Grant, please stop this. You're humiliating our daughter." "Our daughter already knows about your affair, Erin. She's actually been very supportive during this difficult time." I turned back to the crowd. "I want to thank those of you who've reached out with support and friendship. And to those who haven't, well, now you know where everyone stands." I handed the microphone back to the DJ and stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted as I walked through them, some people offering supportive nods while others whispered excitedly about the drama they'd just witnessed. Nathan tried to follow me, but Ty Kramer materialized at my side. I'd invited him to the party specifically for this possibility. "I don't think you want to do that, friend," Ty told Nathan quietly. Nathan looked at Ty's muscular frame and thought better of whatever he'd been planning. Instead, he turned and stalked toward the parking lot, his face burning with humiliation. Erin approached me as I was getting into my car. "I hope you're satisfied," she said bitterly. "Actually, I am." I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. "You chose your ex-boyfriend over your husband, Erin. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What about Chloe? What about our family?" "Chloe will be fine. She's stronger than both of us. And she's learned a valuable lesson about the importance of loyalty and honesty." "And us? Is there any chance we could ever—" "No." I started the engine. "There's no us anymore. There's just you, dealing with the mess you created." I drove away, leaving Erin standing in the parking lot as neighbors whispered and pointed. In my rearview mirror, I could see Nathan's Honda broken down on the side of the road, smoke pouring from under the hood. It was poetic justice. That evening, I sat in my home office, my house now, officially and permanently, and reflected on everything that had happened. In the span of 2 months, I'd gone from a cuckolded husband to a man who'd systematically destroyed his enemies using nothing but truth, patience, and strategic thinking. Erin was unemployed, divorced, and socially ostracized. Nathan was bankrupt, facing criminal charges, and living in a studio apartment across town. Their affair, which had seemed so exciting and romantic, had cost them everything. Meanwhile, I was free. free from a marriage that had been slowly poisoning me, free from the burden of supporting someone who didn't respect me, and free to build whatever life I wanted going forward. Luke knocked on my office door around 8 o'clock. "Mr. Winslow, I brought those Henderson files you wanted to review." "Thanks, Luke. How did your girlfriend like the party?" "She said it was better than reality TV. The whole neighborhood is still talking about your speech." "I imagine they are." "Do you regret any of it? What you did to your wife and Nathan?" I considered the question carefully. "No. They made their choices, and I made mine. The only difference is that my choices were strategic, while theirs were selfish." "What happens now?" "Now we get back to work. I have a business to run and a life to rebuild." Luke nodded and left me alone with my thoughts. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, everyone probably inside discussing the day's events. Tomorrow, there would be new gossip and new dramas to occupy their attention. But tonight, I was content to sit in my office, sipping whiskey and reviewing spreadsheets. Some people might find that boring, but I'd learned that boring was underrated. Boring was honest, boring was reliable. And sometimes, boring was exactly what you needed to destroy people who thought they were smarter than you. I raised my glass in a silent toast to my former wife and her lover, wherever they were spending their evening. They'd taught me an important lesson about the power of patience and planning. I hoped they'd learned something too. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Chloe's number. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing?" "I'm okay, Dad. I saw the videos from the block party on social media. That was intense." "I'm sorry you had to see that. I know it wasn't easy." "Actually, I'm proud of you. Mom and Nathan deserved what they got." "I appreciate your support, but I don't want you to think that revenge is always the answer to life's problems." "I don't. But sometimes people need to face consequences for their actions. You gave them consequences." "Yes, I did." "Are you happy now? I mean, really happy?" I thought about her question. Was I happy? Or was I just satisfied with my revenge? "I'm at peace," I said finally. "For the first time in months, I'm at peace." "Good. That's what matters." After we hung up, I returned to my spreadsheets. Numbers didn't lie, didn't cheat, and didn't betray your trust. They were pure logic. Cause and effect, input and output. Unlike people, numbers were predictable. And predictable was exactly what I needed right now. I came into this story as Grant Winslow, mild-mannered financial auditor. I was leaving it as something else entirely. Someone who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. Erin and Nathan had gambled with my life and lost. Now they would spend years rebuilding what they'd thrown away, while I moved forward with the wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal. I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, and surveyed the quiet satisfaction of my revenge. Some people might call me a villain for what I'd done. Others might call me a hero. I preferred to think of myself as an accountant who'd simply balance the books,